Today, we're not just talking about feelings. We're breaking down a system, a structured mechanical process for taking back control of your emotional state. It's called the Emotional Compression Protocol, and it's designed to release the hidden psychological pressure that, let's be honest, builds up inside all of us. Let's get right into it.
The reason you suddenly snap at a trivial event isn't about that moment. It's the invisible structural buildup of emotional debt. We're going to show you the three-step system to release this emotional compression before the pressure damages your relationships. Look, this is the core problem we're solving today. That moment you overreact, where a tiny, insignificant spark causes a massive explosion, that's not a character flaw. It's a system failure, a predictable one. And we're about to give you the engineering manual to prevent it.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll unpack what we call the emotional debt paradox. Then, we're going to dive deep into the science of why we snap. From there, we'll build out the three-phase decompression protocol, explain the psychology that makes it so incredibly effective, and then wrap up with a direct, no-fluff blueprint you can use immediately.
All right, let's start with the most common and, frankly, the most broken emotional strategy out there, suppression. You know what I'm talking about. We're taught to tough it out, be strong, just push those negative feelings down. We think that by burying frustration or anxiety, we're actually in control. But here's the paradox, the trap. That strategy does the exact opposite. It doesn't prevent an explosion, it guarantees one.
And this brings us to our core concept, emotional compression. The best way to think about this is like a pressure cooker. Every single time you ignore a small annoyance, swallow a frustration, or bite your tongue, you are cranking up the heat and forcing that lid down tighter. For a little while, it feels like control. But that energy, that pressure, it's not going anywhere. It's just accumulating, building, silently, until the system literally cannot contain it anymore. And that's when you get a catastrophic failure of impulse control.
So, what is this invisible mechanism that's causing these completely out of proportion outbursts? I mean, why does something as tiny as spilling your coffee or hitting a red light trigger a reaction that feels 100 times bigger than the event itself? Well, this isn't some big mystery. It's a predictable three-stage system failure happening inside your brain. Let's break down the science of the snap.
Okay, we are now entering the diagnostic phase, and I want you to start thinking about that snap you feel not as some personal weakness, but as a structural breakdown. It's just like a bridge that's been put under way too much load. Your mind has operational limits. Understanding where those limits are, and more importantly, why they fail, is the absolute first step to making sure they don't.
So the whole thing kicks off with what we call emotional debt. Think of your mental energy like a bank account. Every time you have a negative emotion, a disappointment, a frustration, and you don't actually process it, you take on a little bit of psychological debt. Now, one small debt, no big deal. But over days, weeks, months, they compound. That unresolved argument, that sarcastic comment you just let slide, each one adds to the balance. And this debt, it has interest, and it gets paid for with your most valuable, finite resource, your mental energy.
And this is the interest payment on that debt, ego depletion. See, the constant active work of suppressing all those unprocessed feelings is incredibly taxing. It's like running dozens of hidden apps in the background of your phone, just draining the battery. Your working memory, that's the brain's RAM you need for focus and impulse control, it gets devoured by this one huge task of just holding the pressure down. And as those cognitive resources get drained, your ability to think clearly and regulate your impulses just crumbles. Your mental battery is now deep in the red. And now we've hit the final stage of the system failure, the amygdala hijack. Think of your brain as having two key players. You've got the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. That's your rational, thoughtful CEO. It makes calculated decisions. Then you've got the amygdala. That's the primitive, powerful alarm system. It's built for speed, not for accuracy. So when your emotional debt is sky high and your CEO is already exhausted from ego depletion, any new tiny little trigger can push the whole system over the edge. The amygdala just screams danger and seizes control, completely bypassing the rational part of your brain. And this is the moment of collapse. The rational CEO is completely offline. The hyper-reactive alarm system is now flying the plane. Your PFC, totally exhausted and out of resources, completely fails to veto the impulsive emotional reaction. And that is the snap. That flash of rage, the cutting words, it's the violent release of all the pent-up pressure, all of that old debt aimed squarely at a brand new trivial target. It was never, ever about the traffic jam. It was about the weeks of compressed frustration that came before it.
Okay, so that was the diagnosis, a clear mechanical sequence of failure. So now we pivot. We go from the problem straight to the solution. And this is not about some vague advice like, just relax. No, this is an engineering fix. It's a 3-phase protocol designed to systematically stop that failure sequence from ever happening again.
The entire protocol is built on 3 interlocking parts. First up, the pressure audit. This is how you're going to learn to actually see the pressure building. Second, the decompression valve. This is your scheduled, mandatory practice for safely releasing that pressure. And third, the veto reinforcement. This is a real-time tool to strengthen your rational brain's ability to stay in charge. Let's break each one down.
Phase 1 is all about building awareness because you can't manage what you don't measure. The whole point of the pressure audit is to turn that vague feeling of, I'm stressed, into concrete data. You're going to start regularly scanning yourself. Physically, is your jaw clenched? Are your shoulders tight? Is your breathing shallow? And then cognitively, are you ruminating, just replaying an argument over and over? These aren't just feelings, they are dashboard warning lights telling you that your system pressure is getting critical.
So, once your audit tells you pressure is high, you have to activate the decompression valve. This is the core maintenance routine. It is non-negotiable. The single most effective method is something called low-friction expressive writing. For just 5 or 10 minutes, you write, completely uncensored, about what's causing the pressure. This is not a Dear Diary moment. This is a data dump. You're literally getting the cognitive load out of your head. Another option is a physiological reset, like the TIP skill, which uses temperature, like splashing cold water on your face, and intense exercise to force a hard reset on your nervous system.
This is your last line of defense. It's the tool you use in the heat of the moment, when you feel that surge of emotion starting to rise. The Veto Reinforcement is a really simple 2-step intervention. First, the instant you feel that flash of anger, you hit a hard 3-second pause. You do nothing. You say nothing. You just breathe. That tiny little gap is a neurological circuit breaker, giving your PFC a split second to come back online. In that pause, you deliver your recalibration statement. This pressure is old debt, not the current problem. That phrase is key. It cognitively separates the past from the present, and it robs the trigger of its power.
So we've got the what, the 3 phases of the protocol. But to really commit to a system, you need to understand the why. Why is this specific sequence so powerful? Well, the answer is that it directly targets and reverses that 3-stage failure we diagnosed earlier. It is a precise countermeasure.
This slide just lays it all out in black and white. Without this protocol, your default state is high cognitive load, your fight or flight system is running the show, and you are chronically vulnerable to PFC failure and amygdala hijacks. But with the protocol, you systematically conserve your working memory, you intentionally activate your rest and digest nervous system, and you actively strengthen your brain's ability to separate old feelings from new triggers. You literally move from a system in crisis to a system built for stability.
Let's get into the science of why this works so well. Each part of the protocol is hitting a specific psychological target. Expressive writing, for example, it conserves working memory. By translating those chaotic feelings into language and getting them out of your head, you free up the massive amount of cognitive energy that was being burned just holding them down. The physiological reset, it directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms your body by fighting back against stress hormones like cortisol. And finally, the veto reinforcement strengthens emotional decoupling. Every time you pause and reframe, you are physically training your brain to build new neural pathways, ones that separate a current event from a mountain of past emotional debt.
Okay, theory and science are fantastic, but execution is what actually creates change. So this final section is all about turning this protocol from an idea you understand into an action you take. This is your blueprint for taking back control, starting the moment this explainer is over.
Here are your orders. 1. Right now, as you're listening, perform a physical audit. Scan your body. Where are you holding tension? Your jaw? Your shoulders? Now, give a name to the unresolved feeling that's causing it. 2. I want you to open your calendar. Schedule a 5-minute non-negotiable appointment with yourself for tomorrow. Call it decompression. Protect that time. That is your slot for expressive writing. And 3. Make a commitment to yourself that the very next time you feel that familiar surge of irritation, you will deploy the 3-second pause in your recalibration statement. This is how you go from knowing to doing.
Look, if you only remember one thing from our time today, let it be this. Our culture has sold us a dangerous lie about emotional strength. We've been told it's about how much pressure you can silently take. That is fundamentally wrong. True emotional stability is not measured by the stress you endure. It is measured by the frequency of your strategic release. It is a maintenance protocol, not a test of brute force.
And that really just leaves us with one final question. It's a clear choice. You can stick with the old, broken system of suppression that absolutely guarantees an eventual explosion, or you can install a new, smarter system of regular, strategic decompression. So are you ready to stop suppressing and start decompressing? Let's do a quick recap. The emotional compression protocol solves the problem of chronic emotional debt and impulse control failure. And why this matters so much is that it gives you a systematic way to conserve your executive function and prevent those destructive, out-of-proportion outbursts. The decompression valve and veto reinforcement framework works because it activates your parasympathetic nervous system and strengthens emotional decoupling, giving you real structural control. Always remember, productivity isn't about doing more, it's about mastering systems that make focus effortless.